this episode, we continue audit and assessment work by looking at how an organization defines what an audit is supposed to cover and what kind of engagement is being performed. An audit can quickly become confusing if nobody agrees on the boundaries, purpose, timing, authority, or expected result. That is why scope, charters, frequency, gap analysis, internal reviews, external reviews, regulatory reviews, and benchmarking matter. They help turn a vague request to check security into a defined activity that people can plan, support, and understand. When you are new to cybersecurity, it may feel natural to think an audit simply means someone checks whether security is good. In real work, that is too broad. An audit needs to know what it is measuring against, what systems or processes are included, what evidence is needed, and who will use the results. Before we continue, a quick note. This audio course is part of our companion study series. The first book is a detailed study guide that explains the exam and helps you prepare for it with confidence. The second is a Kindle-only ebook with 1,000 flashcards you can use on your mobile device or Kindle for quick review. You can find both at CyberAuthor.me in the Bare Metal Study Guide series. Audit scope is the boundary of the review. It explains what is included, what is excluded, and what question the audit is trying to answer. Scope might focus on a single system, a business process, a department, a vendor, a control family, a regulation, a time period, or a full security program. Without scope, the audit can expand in every direction and still miss the point. For example, reviewing access control could mean checking user account creation, privileged access, terminated employee access, remote access, application permissions, or physical access to secure areas. Those are related, but they are not identical. A clear scope prevents confusion by saying which parts are in the review. It also protects the people being audited because they know what evidence is expected and what the audit team is actually evaluating. Scope also helps keep audit conclusions fair. If an audit only reviewed one application, the final report should not imply that every application in the organization has the same condition. If the audit only looked at records from one quarter, the conclusion should not pretend it reviewed the entire year. This may sound obvious, but scope mistakes can lead to misleading confidence or unfair criticism. A narrow review can be useful when the question is narrow. A broad review can be useful when leadership needs a wider picture. The key is honesty about the boundary. You should also pay attention to exclusions. Sometimes a system, location, vendor, or data type is excluded because it is not relevant. Other times, an exclusion may hide an important risk. Good audit planning explains exclusions clearly, so everyone understands what the results do and do not prove. An audit charter gives the audit function or audit engagement its authority and direction. It can define the purpose of the audit activity, the authority to request information, the responsibilities of auditors and audited teams, reporting relationships, independence expectations, and how findings will be communicated. You can think of a charter as the document that explains why the audit team has the right to perform the review and what rules guide the engagement. Without that authority, audit requests can feel optional or confusing. A team might wonder why it must provide records, who approved the review, or how the results will be used. A charter helps answer those questions before friction builds. It also protects the audit process by making it clear that the review is not just a personal request from one employee. An audit charter can also support independence, which means the audit should be able to reach conclusions without improper influence from the people being reviewed. Independence does not mean auditors are hostile or disconnected from the organization. It means they should have enough separation to evaluate evidence honestly. If a person audits their own work, there is a risk they may overlook weaknesses or feel pressure to defend past decisions. Internal audit teams often report in a way that helps preserve objectivity, even though they are part of the same organization. For cybersecurity, independence is important because security findings can be uncomfortable. A weak control, missing evidence, or repeated exception may affect budgets, deadlines, reputations, or leadership decisions. A charter helps create the authority and structure needed for honest review. Audit frequency describes how often a review occurs. Some audits happen annually, some happen quarterly, some happen before a major change, and some happen only when a specific concern appears. Frequency should be based on risk, requirement, and business need. A critical payment system may need more frequent review than a low-risk internal tool. A regulation or contract may require certain reviews on a defined schedule. A recent incident may trigger a special assessment. Frequency matters because controls can drift over time. A process that worked well during one review may weaken later if staff change, systems are modified, or exceptions pile up. Auditing too rarely can leave the organization blind. Auditing too often without a reason can waste time and create fatigue. The goal is a schedule that matches the importance and volatility of what is being reviewed. Gap analysis is a practical way to compare the current state against a required or desired state. The current state is what the organization is actually doing today. The required state may come from a law, regulation, contract, framework, standard, policy, or security objective. The desired state may be a maturity goal, a stronger internal target, or a future operating model the organization wants to reach. Gap analysis asks where the differences are. For example, a policy might require quarterly access reviews, but the current process may only perform reviews once a year. A standard might require encryption for sensitive data, but one older system may not support it yet. A gap analysis does not automatically fix the issue. It identifies the distance between where the organization is and where it needs or wants to be. A good gap analysis should explain the gap clearly enough that action can follow. Saying access control is weak is not as useful as saying privileged access reviews are not performed for two critical applications, evidence is not retained, and ownership is unclear. That level of detail helps leaders decide what must change. Gap analysis can support planning, budgeting, risk treatment, and compliance preparation. It can also prevent surprises before an external review. If an organization knows a required control is missing, it can decide whether to fix it, document an exception, accept the risk, or adjust the timeline. Gap analysis is not only about failure. It can also show where the organization is already close to the target and needs only small improvements. The value comes from making the difference visible, specific, and tied to a requirement or goal. Internal reviews are assessments performed by people inside the organization. They may be done by internal audit, security teams, compliance teams, risk teams, or control owners, depending on the purpose. Internal reviews are useful because internal personnel understand the organization's systems, culture, processes, and constraints. They can often work more quickly than outside reviewers and may help teams improve before a formal external audit. Internal reviews can be less intimidating, but they still need discipline. If the review is too casual, too friendly, or too dependent on trust, it may miss real problems. Internal reviewers should still define scope, gather evidence, document findings, and communicate results clearly. A strong internal review program helps the organization find and correct issues before they become larger compliance, operational, or security failures. External reviews are performed by someone outside the organization. That outside party might be an independent auditor, assessor, consultant, customer, regulator, certification body, or another authorized reviewer. External reviews can provide more objectivity because the reviewer is not part of the day-to-day operation being assessed. They may also carry more credibility with customers, regulators, insurers, and business partners. External reviews can be required by contracts, regulations, industry expectations, or leadership decisions. They can also be more formal and demanding than internal reviews because the outside party may require specific evidence and may not accept informal explanations. This can feel uncomfortable, but it can be valuable. An external review may identify blind spots that internal teams have grown used to. It may also validate that controls are working and provide assurance to people outside the organization. Regulatory reviews are assessments tied to legal or regulatory obligations. A regulator may examine whether the organization follows specific rules for data protection, financial operations, health information, safety, privacy, reporting, or other controlled activities. These reviews can have serious consequences because findings may lead to penalties, corrective action, reporting duties, restrictions, or increased oversight. Regulatory reviews are not only about whether security tools exist. They often look at governance, documentation, evidence, responsibility, training, monitoring, and whether required processes are followed consistently. If a regulation says certain records must be retained, the organization needs evidence. If it requires incident reporting within a certain period, the organization needs a process that supports that timeline. For cybersecurity, regulatory reviews reinforce a larger lesson. Security controls must be connected to obligations, and evidence must be available when the organization is asked to prove compliance. Benchmarking compares the organization's current practices, performance, or maturity against a reference point. That reference point might be an industry standard, a peer group, a framework, a prior internal baseline, or a target maturity level. Benchmarking helps answer a different question from basic compliance. Compliance may ask whether the organization meets a required minimum. Benchmarking may ask how the organization compares with others or how it is progressing over time. For example, an organization may benchmark patching speed, incident response maturity, security awareness completion, vulnerability remediation, backup testing, or access review consistency. Benchmarking can help leadership see whether security performance is improving, lagging, or staying flat. It can also support investment decisions. If similar organizations have stronger resilience or faster recovery, leadership may decide that improvement is needed to remain competitive and trustworthy. Benchmarking needs care because comparisons can be misleading. One organization may have a very different size, risk profile, budget, industry, technology environment, or legal obligation than another. Comparing a small local business with a large financial institution may not produce useful conclusions. Even within the same industry, the data may not be perfectly comparable. You should treat benchmarks as context, not as absolute truth. They can help ask better questions, but they should not replace risk-based thinking. If a benchmark says the average organization reviews access twice a year, that does not automatically mean twice a year is enough for a highly sensitive system. If a benchmark says most companies take a certain number of days to patch, that does not mean the organization should accept that timeline for internet-facing critical vulnerabilities. Benchmarks support judgment, but they do not replace it. All of these engagement types and planning tools connect back to the idea of current state versus required or desired state. The current state is what evidence shows is happening now. The required state is what the organization must do because of policy, law, regulation, contract, standard, or formal commitment. The desired state is where the organization wants to be to reduce risk, improve maturity, or support business goals. Audits and assessments compare those states and make differences visible. A charter gives authority. Scope gives boundaries. Frequency sets timing. Gap analysis identifies differences. Internal reviews help the organization check itself. External reviews bring independent perspective. Regulatory reviews test formal obligations. Benchmarking adds context for comparison and improvement. Together, these activities help security move from assumption to measured understanding. The main idea to carry forward is that audits and assessments need clear boundaries and a clear purpose. Scope defines what is included and what is excluded. A charter gives authority, direction, and structure to the audit activity. Frequency helps make sure reviews happen often enough to match risk and requirements. Gap analysis compares today's reality with a required or desired state. Internal reviews help the organization find issues before they become bigger problems. External reviews provide independent perspective and often stronger assurance. Regulatory reviews test whether formal obligations are being met. Benchmarking helps compare performance or maturity against a useful reference point. For Security Plus SY0801, do not think of audits as random inspections. Think of them as structured engagements that compare evidence against expectations so the organization can see where it stands and what must improve.
Thanks for listening. For more audio courses, daily newsletters, and more, please visit BareMetalCyber.com.